In today's episode, we're digging deep into LaMelo Ball, the potential number one pick in the 2020 NBA draft. Michael Bolton, he wants to hear about it.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are digging into our third prospect in the NBA draft, that is LaMelo Ball. Lots to talk about there. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. Go to builtbar.com, the best tasting low-calorie, high-protein protein bars that you can find, and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get yourself $10 off your order. Let's talk about LaMelo Ball, of course, a name that we've known about for a very long time. His name was thrust out there as soon as his brother entered the NBA draft process, Lonzo Ball, back all the way back in 2016, even before his draft year of 2017. We've known about Melo. We've seen the 90-point high school games. We've seen his trip to Lithuania and all that nonsense surrounding his father. And then, instead of going to college, he came down to Australia to play in the NBL for the Illawarra Hawks. Now, this is let's rephrase it. This is the only draft prospect in this class that I have seen play in person. I went to see LaMelo play a game here in Melbourne in early October, against Southeast Melbourne, and he looked fantastic before injuries ended his season, and he looked great in that one game. Now, of course, I've watched tape of all of his other games and seen a lot of other action, but I did see one of those in person, and it was really telling. Now, at this point, again, this draft is such a weird one that Melo could very easily go number one. He could go number 4 or number 5. There is no number one prospect in this draft. There's no one worthy of being a number one prospect in this draft. There's no Zion Williamson. There's no, we need to get number one so we can draft Zion. There's no, we need to get the number one pick so we can screw up our franchise and pass on Luka Doncic type of player. Whoever you get, it could be the best player at 1, at 3, at 6, at 10, at 11, at 15, whatever it is. There's just so much evenness among this group. So while I can say at this point, having scouted fully, Killian Hayes, Obi Toppin, and now LaMelo Ball, that I have LaMelo at number 1, and that's sort of where I entered into this process as well. I have him at number 1, but does that mean that he is going to be the best player? Is he a can't-miss prospect? Would I be mortgaging things to go and get him? Probably not. There are a lot of downsides to LaMelo, a lot of reasons why he may not work out in the NBA. There are a lot of reasons why he may become a solid all-star level player. But will he ever become a franchise changer, an MVP candidate on his rookie contract like Luka Doncic, a dominant force like Zion Williamson? Probably not. But there is still a lot to like about what LaMelo Ball can do. Now, let's get this one thing out of the way first. I am not worried at all about LaVar Ball. I'm not saying I wouldn't draft him because of his dad. When's the last time you heard anything from LaVar? Let's be honest. I heard absolutely nothing from him down here. I don't even think did he even come down here? I haven't heard one single thing out of that dickhead for a long time. And that's a good thing. Has LaVar had any input in Lonzo's career in New Orleans? Sure, he was a big dick on campus early on when Lonzo was playing for the Lakers. Even that eased off in the second season or so. We just haven't heard anything from this bloke. It just doesn't worry me. If he's not out there spouting nonsense about, Lonzo's not going to play in New Orleans, what kind of shit city is this? Then what does it matter about LaMelo? Like, he could go anywhere else. New Orleans is literally the smallest market in the NBA. So I don't think there's going to be any problem with that. Maybe there is, maybe I'm wrong. I don't see that as being a real concern. So let's talk about what LaMelo actually is. He's a 6'7" point guard. That's huge. A really big size, good wingspan, and he's young. If the draft was being held at the end of June like it was supposed to be, he'd be 18 years of age on draft day, 19 when the NBA season starts. That's obviously really, really young. I think he is the number one point guard prospect in this draft, but it's not a slam dunk that that's the player that he is going to be necessarily. Let's jump on. If you aren't watching this on YouTube, go and check out. I've got some highlights up here I'm going to throw up on the screen. As I said, a 6'7" guard, played down in Illawarra, played 31 minutes a night, averaged 17 points, 7.5 rebounds, and almost 7 assists. They are the great numbers. The bad ones are 25% from 3, 38% overall from the field, and a 46% true shooting. They are all rough numbers. We know there are concerns with Lonzo and his shooting numbers. Very similar concerns here for LaMelo. I guess the positive I'll say out of that is that he hit over 72% of his free throws, which we know Lonzo had an issue with. Now, Lonzo, of course, shot those numbers in college as well, so there is that concern. Now, these aren't the same player. He doesn't have the same whack shooting motion that Lonzo had. They are not the same guy. He is way more of a scoring threat than what Lonzo Ball is. To me, he's still a really, really good passer and is going to be a great NBA passer from day one when he enters the league, and we're going to talk about his passing soon. He's got an ability here to drive to the rack, but there is a concern, I think, with LaMelo in that his free throw rate is really, really low. Like that is a worry. Free throw rate of under 24%. That's not a high number, and some of that is because he just is frail. He's under 200 pounds at 6'7". That is very, very skinny. He weighs less than me. That is a very skinny player. He seems to be afraid of contact at times and doesn't draw those free throws. And one thing we've seen recently is that players who get to the line a lot, that tends to equal being a very good player and also being a very good fantasy player. So there are some concerns about that. And some of these highlights, you see him driving, you see him dunking. He's not an explosive athlete. He's not going to hammer it down on blokes through traffic, but he can get up, he can dunk. He's 6'7", you'd hope he can. He's got some finishing ability, but it's not like he is perfect in that area. There's still a lot to work on in terms of that. I've got no concerns about his passing. He is an elite playmaker. He can find guys. He can hit passes that you don't even expect someone to attempt, let alone make. And that's fantastic. And he's got somewhat of a mid-range game. It's not great, but it's more about him having that ability to open guys up. He's more of a three-point threat than someone like Ben Simmons, of course, who's zero threat there. We saw a really nice crafty layup there from Melo. So there is quite a bit to like about him, but that offensive thing is a concern. True shooting of as low as that, under 50, is a real massive worry. I think he can be an okay NBA three-point shooter. I think we're looking at 33 to 35% type of a guy, not a 37 to 40% three-point shooter, but he'd want to be better than he was. Now, encouragingly, he took almost 7 three-pointers a game for Illawarra. He hit under 2 of them at 25%, which is rough, but the encouraging thing is getting those attempts up. He also, again, a solid enough free throw percentage. He generated steals at a really high rate as well. And all of those things are massively encouraging. If you want to be massively encouraged and you want to get that strength to get yourself to the line, Built Bar, they are the way to go. The best protein bars, the most tasty protein bars on the market. I can't wait for my box of Built Bars to arrive. Now, yesterday I actually did a giveaway on Twitter where I chucked out a trivia question, and whoever got the answer right, I bought them a box of Built Bar. That's how much I believe in these bars and how good they are. High protein, really low calories, low sugar as well. Just look at the peanut butter one, 170 calories, 20 grams of protein, but only 3 grams of sugar. That's a fantastic level of protein to sugar ratio. There's tons of flavors. The flavors are amazing. Coconut almond, coconut chocolate cream, banana nut bread, orange chocolate cream. That is the one that I am absolutely gagging for. I want that orange chocolate cream bar. Raspberry chocolate cream, mocha chocolate cream. There's also a dedicated nut-free section made at their dedicated nut-free facility. You can buy the mixed box, 15 flavors in 18 bars, get a taste of all those flavors. You can build your own box, have 6 bars of 3 different flavors. The opportunities are almost endless with Built Bar to get these great tasting protein bars into your life and into your diet. So go to BuiltBar.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON. That'll save you $10 off a box. That is a huge saving. You get a box, I think it's like $37 for a box of 18, $10 off. We are talking about a huge saving. So go to BuiltBar.com and use that promo code LOCKEDON to save $10 off. All right, let's talk a little bit more about LaMelo and what we can look at him in the NBA. As I said, I think he's going to be, the passing, there's no concerns whatsoever. And let's take a look at some of those passing clips from LaMelo that we do have here to have a look at. He's able to find guys, again, that we just don't expect with the passing, like really quick release on the passes, strength to get it into tight windows, Great stuff on the pick and roll, which is, of course, massively important in the NBA. Hitting open guys. Let's see that one there, just a little deft drop off over the shoulder. Really important type of passes that can open up things for an offense. And I don't think there's any worry with that. He's going to have the ball in his hands. But as we've seen even with Lonzo this season, is he can work as a point guard without necessarily handling the ball every single time. Brandon Ingram handles it. Drew Holiday handles it. But Lonzo is still out there generating assists, creating buckets in transition by hitting open passes. And Lonzo and LaMelo, they both have that high level vision. I think LaMelo could even be a better passer than Lonzo, which is going to be a huge thing for his career. If he's able to do that, and if he can develop into a strong enough shooter, which we don't know that at this point, but if he can develop into a league average shooter, that opens up all of the passing, and then he becomes even more deadly. Now that's probably for him to become a league average efficiency guy, it's probably his high end outcome. So getting there is not going to be ideal, but there's a difference between being bad, being below average, or being average. I think he easily is that below average shooter. And then that opens up all of that passing. He needs to develop more strength. He needs to develop more confidence to get to the line and get to the rack. What did he average? 3.9 free throw attempts per game, which is not a bad number, but it's not elite by any means. But he's already got some defensive ability to get steals. We'll talk about that in a second. The rebounding and assists, don't even worry about that. That's fine. 3-point attempts, not afraid to do it. Usage was decent as well. Great assist to turnover ratio, 2.7, which is a really strong number, especially for an 18-year-old playing in a men's league down in Australia. Absolutely really positive numbers coming from LaMelo Ball in this stint in Australia. Now, of course, it was 12 games. He had that issue with his foot that ended his season early, and he probably could have come back. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But, of course, when he's at that spot, you don't need to risk it. And I think that was the right decision for him. He can play a little bit off the ball. He can play on the ball. You want him to do that stuff in half court and in transition so he's able to hit open players. I think he's got a guaranteed role in the NBA somewhere, and it's probably as a starter, and it probably pushes. I think he can get to multiple all-star appearances, but all of it is going to come down to his shooting. He's got to be able to finish stronger at the rim as well, but it's going to be shooting. Now, defensively, there are problems. Right, there's no doubt he has some concerns with his defense. I'm not going to deny that at all. But he's big, he's long, he has a high steal rate in the NBA, which is often a good indicator of strong statistical translations into the NBA. That length enables him to block shots a little bit as well. He's had a couple of blocks in these highlights. And I think that could it be a Ben Simmons issue of just getting into an NBA environment and focusing on defense? Well, now LaMelo didn't have the excuse of I'm playing in college and I don't give a shit about defense like Simmons did. He didn't not try. Like the game I saw, I thought he defended okay. The instincts weren't there. He was probably a step slow on some of that stuff. And of course, the strength was a real factor going up against blokes like Mitch Creek, who was just dominant in that game. Like, that's a tough ask for someone like LaMelo at age 18 with his lack of strength to be able to guard him. But he's not a disaster on defense. He's not Isaiah Thomas on defense. He's not Trae Young on defense. Like, he can thoroughly be an average guy. I think he can be solid defensively. I think he can be well above average offensively. I don't really see a massive downside in him. I don't think he's going to flame out of the NBA, which is obviously something you don't want to see. The shot is really the worry, though. Of course, can it get there? Can it get to be average? And I'm not 100% convinced that it will, but I think there is a decent chance that we can get something. Now, when we look at draft models, I've got Jacob Goldstein's here. He comes out clearly as the number one prospect in this class. And in fact, going back to 2017, which is how his draft model has gone back, so 4 draft classes, there's only 3 players above LaMelo in his overall draft model. Zion at number 1, that's fine. Luka at number 2, of course. Lonzo at number 3, interestingly. And then LaMelo at number 4. Now, you would say that Lonzo at number 3 isn't accurate because Jason Tatum exists below him. Ja Morant's there. De'Aaron Fox is there. DeAndre Ayton, Jaren Jackson. Those guys are all there and probably should be pushed higher. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You'd say all of those guys have probably shown more than Lonzo. But Lonzo is unfairly criticized. He's actually really, really good. But I don't think he's probably that third level on that list. But LaMelo comes out as the number one prospect in this group. And I think that's important to note. When I look at my fantasy statistical translations from LaMelo, he comes out at about the, overall, if you dropped his numbers, flat translations, 30 minutes a night into the current NBA, he'd be like the 125th ranked player in fantasy, which is not bad. It comes in ahead of someone like RJ Hampton, who played in the NBL as well. It's not as good as Killian Hayes, who came in at 70th. But then you look at someone like Obi Toppin, who came in 110th when we did it last week. So around that sort of area in fantasy contributions. It's a little bit harder with Melo because you're dealing with his numbers from Australia and the horrible, horrible shooting percentages. Now, if he shoots at a better rate than he did in Australia, then he's easily a top 100 player. But so much as that is going to depend on what team he ends up going to and what opportunities he gets. But as I said, I've got zero worries about the assist translating. They're going to be there immediately. He's going to rebound the ball immediately. I think he's going to generate steals immediately, and he's going to hit threes. How well he hits them is another point, but he's going to take them and he's going to hit them. It's all going to come down to, can he get that shot to work to get more scoring? Can he get to the line more? Can he hit those free throws? And can he get out there and actually be a real threat that opens up everything about the rest of his game and about the rest of the offense? So there's a lot of important caveats that is going to come from those shooting numbers that LaMelo can get to. So we need to see more. He does need to work more on his shooting. The mechanics probably need a little bit of tweaking, which might be rough in a rookie season. His catch and shoot stuff was really promising, so that's a positive thing. He's not going to be in massive amounts of catch and shoot situations given his role likely in an offense. He's got pretty decent shot selection in terms of getting to the rim or taking threes and not too many contested mid-ranges. He was able to generate some space on some of those drives, which again, important things for him to be able to do given some of the shooting struggles that he has had. So I think there is really a lot to like, and as you see in that GIF down the bottom, taking it into that sort of baseline jumper, dribbling it back out to three, and then turning around and hitting the shot. Like that's a really smart play from him, as well as even if the shot doesn't go in, but it opens things up in that area for someone who's a better mid-range shooter than him to get into. So I do really think there is a lot to like about LaMelo Ball coming into this draft. At this point, he's my number one prospect in terms of where I would look at him in a fantasy rookie draft. It's up there in terms of the top three. I'm not sure that I would take him at number one, even if he does go number one in the overall draft. There are other players that I would consider. A guy like Wiseman, who translates really well, even Killian Hayes translating pretty well. They'd all be in the mix for that number one pick, and I might actually look for Hayes as the number one guy, but I don't think there'd be anything wrong with taking LaMelo Ball number one in a fantasy rookie dynasty draft. Now, in terms of teams where he can go to, Golden State, it's very similar to what I talked about with Hayes. Yes, Steph and Clay are there. Steph and Clay are not young. A third guard absolutely is necessary. Kai Bowman's not going to cut it. Jordan Poole's not going to cut it. Sure, Melo in there, play him 27 minutes a night, no worries. Cleveland, I'm not sold on Darius Garland, are you? I'm not sold on Colin Sexton as a ball handler. In fact, nobody should be. He can score, great. I think LaMelo would work well. Minnesota, that's maybe the iffy one. Playing next to D'Angelo Russell, is there enough athleticism with those guys, enough defense with those guys? I don't know about that one. Trae Young in Atlanta. That's a strange one. Now, Young needs the ball in his hands a lot to create and to score. Melo's a better passer than Trae. I think Trae's an excellent passer. So how do they fit together? That might be a bit rough as well. Detroit, absolute no-brainer. He goes there. The Knicks, absolute no-brainer. He goes there. The Bulls, I think absolute no-brainer as well. I think Kobe White's probably better off the ball and would actually thrive next to someone like LaMelo Ball. Charlotte, no worries. You got to draft in there as well. Washington at number 9. John Wall's coming off an Achilles and he's old. Cool. You got to get him. And then Phoenix, Ricky Rubio's not around forever. Sure. The concerns you have there in that top 10 is Minnesota and Atlanta. How does LaMelo fit in that group? I'm not 100% certain. Everyone else, knock yourself out. I think he would fit perfectly. In fact, the place you want him is Detroit, I think, or New York. They're the two real absolute standout. You'd love him in Golden State just because it's Golden State and he's going to get to learn from a first-class organization, not the shit show that is Detroit, New York, Cleveland, all those nonsense organizations. So going to Golden State, everyone would love to do that because of the high quality of the people around that and the way that they develop and how successful they've been. So you'd want that thing for any of these players. And even in fit, I think it makes some sense for him to go to somewhere like Golden State. All right, that is going to do it for me talking about LaMelo Ball. Don't forget, subscribe to the show, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and check out Built Bar, builtbar.com, and use the promo code LOCKEDON for $10 off. Great deal over there. If you haven't seen it, over on my YouTube channel, I am doing a 2K20 My League, an all-time great My League, so the all-time best teams over the last 40 years for every franchise, and then I took on an expansion team, draft an expansion draft. You're seeing me talk about the league, talk about stories that are developing, injuries, and then you see some full games mixed in as well of my team, the Tampa Bay Pyre. So you can check that out on YouTube. They've also got a Twitter account at Bay Pyre, Baypyre. Go and check that out just for some interesting sports to keep your mind off having absolutely nothing else going on at the moment in the sporting world. Guys, follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.